Dear Presidents of the Constitutional Courts, dear members of the Parliament, Excellencies, judges of the Constitutional Courts, State Secretaries, distinguished guests, dear Pan-European friends. Good evening and welcome once again on the international conference entitled Multidimensionality of European Foreign Policy. The conference is organized by the Slovenian Pan-European movement and is happening under the high patronage of the European Parliament and under the auspices of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of the Republic of Slovenia. For this occasion, also the President of the European Parliament, Mr. Martin Schulz, conferred his presence, but because of his busy schedule, he had to cancel it later on. However, he has sent a very nice letter to the President of the Slovenian Pan-European movement, Mr. Laris Geiser, and here are some sentences that Mr. Schulz wrote. Your initiative, which brings together high-level representatives from Slovenian authorities and international organizations, experts in foreign policy and members of parliaments to discuss various aspects of European foreign policy, is very much appreciated. Europe is a global player, and the idea of Europe is still extremely attractive around the world. Europe still stands for the most successful peace project in the history and for a promise of democracy and freedom. Europe still stands for a foreign policy model which seeks to reconcile interests and individuals throughout dialogue, a model tailor-made for increasingly multipolar world. The Lisbon Treaty introduced major changes by making the European Union's external action more coherent. That is why your conference, which focuses on the different levels of the European response to global economic, diplomatic, geopolitical, and cultural changes, is very much appreciated. Given the clear European dimension of your project, it is with great pleasure that I can grant the European Parliament's high patronage to your initiative. May I take this opportunity to wish you every success with what should be an excellent event. So from the words of Mr. Martin Schulz, you could already hear what the aim of the conference that will take place here in Ljubljana until Sunday is. The conference is the second in a row of conferences that will be prepared in the framework of the project European Citizens for European Foreign Policy. The first very successful one took place in October in Vienna. It was organized by the Slovenian Pan-European movement in cooperation with the Austrian Pan-European movement and with the Diplomatic Academy of Vienna. 2 more conferences are planned until the end of the project. In April, the conference will take place in Trieste, and in October, we will gather again here in Ljubljana. The project European Citizens for European Foreign Policy is aimed at bringing together citizens, experts and policymakers in comprehensive discussion about European foreign policy and strategies. Moreover, it is focused on the role of citizens in European foreign policy and on raising awareness among citizens on what rights it brings. Slovenian Pan-European Movement is the project coordinator, and together with 12 other partners, they help the European Commission find the guidelines for the foreign policy of European Union in the future. So it is all about the future and how it will look like. But the origins of the idea of Pan-Europe can be found already back in 1922, when the Austrian politician, diplomat and philosopher Richard Coudenhove-Kalergi wrote Pan-European Manifest, in which he suggested a united Europe and peaceful mutual relations among the European countries. His idea about the united Europe was a consequence or an answer to the atrocities of the World War I. This year is the 100th anniversary since the atrocities of the World War I began. We will often look back. It is good and even necessary to look back. But sometimes we look back too often. Already Kalergi warned in his manifest in 1922, the eyes of Europe are turned backwards instead of forwards. This conference is definitely meant to look forward. To give a short address, I would like to invite Mr. Jožef Horvat, Chair of the EU Affairs Committee of the National Assembly of the Republic of Slovenia. Mr. Horvat, the floor is yours.
Dear President of the Slovenian PanEuropean movement, Mr. Laris Gajser, dear member of the Constitutional Court of the Republic of Slovenia, Dr. Ernest Petric, dear State Secretary of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Mr. Bogdan Benko, dear colleagues, members of the National Assembly and the European Parliament, Excellencies, dear guests, dear Pan-European friends. As regards the future of the EU foreign policy, mention first needs to be made of at least one essential element of, one could say, the near past, namely the Lisbon Treaty, which brought two key novelties in the field of the common foreign and security policy: the Office of the High Representative of the Union for Foreign Affairs and Security Policy and the European External Action Service. The service was established to adjust the Union's common external action to the new situation of the world and improve its efficiency. New relations in world politics, new blocs, and new regions of power outside the EU, as well as new global issues, bring along a growing number of challenges that exceed the exclusively individual national interests of the member states and call for good cooperation between the member states and EU institutions. The European Parliament participates in the Union's external action by the exercising political control and through its role in legislative and budgetary procedures. Adoption of the budget, equal provision of funds. The High Representative must regularly consult the European Parliament about the key aspects and basic decisions relating to the common foreign and security policy, and make sure that its opinions are taken into consideration as appropriate. The Lisbon Treaty increased the competencies of the national parliaments of EU member states. For the first time, national parliaments are formally involved in the EU decision-making process and take part in the inter-parliamentary cooperation between national parliaments and with the European Parliament in accordance with the protocol on the role of national parliaments in the European Union. Parliamentary control over foreign security and defense policies of individual states is indeed among the most important tasks of parliaments. The Lisbon Treaty and Protocol number 1 on the role of national parliaments in the European Union in fact define, among other things, the role of the European and national parliaments and the control of the common foreign and security policy and the common security and defense policy at the level of the EU, but do not explicitly provide the way such is be organized. Control over the common foreign and security policy must take place also in the form of adequate interparliamentary cooperation between all member states' parliaments. Considering the differing definitions of control over foreign security and defense policy in individual member states and the fact that in June 2011 the Assembly of the Western European Union, the European Security and Defense Assembly, ceased to exist, which according to many represents an outstanding issue in parliamentary control over the EU security and defense policy, a new solution was needed to ensure control over the common foreign and security policy and the common security and defense policy. A few meetings thereon were organized by the European Parliament and attended by representatives of national parliaments who discussed future steps and possibilities to set up a body for the control of the common foreign and security policy as envisaged by the Lisbon Treaty. Hence, the Interparliamentary Conference for the Common Foreign and Security Policy and the Common Security and Defense Policy was established and met for the first time during the Cyprus presidency of the EU Council on Cyprus in September 2012, when it adopted its rules of procedure. The Interparliamentary Conference is attended by delegations of EU national parliaments, up to 6 members each, and meets twice a year, once during every presidency. Its meetings provide an opportunity to exchange views and good practices in the area of the common foreign and security policy and the common security and defense policy with the representatives of the country holding the presidency, the EU High Representative, and representatives of the European Commission, as well as among individual member states. In Slovenia, a key role of the formulation of foreign policy is played by the Parliamentary Committee on Foreign Policy, which is one of the National Assembly committees competent for EU affairs, beside the Committee on EU Affairs. I would like to conclude by questioning the efficiency of common foreign and security policy. Critics consider it totally inefficient. Its supporters welcome it as a major positive achievement for the EU. But the truth is that we cannot be satisfied with the common foreign security and defense policy, nor with the activity of the European External Action Service. The establishment of the service took much longer than originally anticipated. Moreover, the member states are not always successful in formulating a common opinion or at least reaching consensus, also when, or particularly when, key foreign policy issues are at stake, such as recognitions of states, Kosovo, for example, or voting to raise the status of Palestine in the UN, where no agreement could be reached and the position of individual members was changing up until the voting. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. I wish you good discussions and I wish you good conclusions of this conference. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Horvat. The next speaker unfortunately can't be here with us in Ljubljana, but he will give his address via video. Mr. Gianni Pittella, Vice President of the European Parliament.
Cari amici del movimento sloveno PanEuropeo, caro Presidente Laris, per impegni istituzionali non posso partecipare alla vostra importante iniziativa, ma ci tengo comunque ad esprimere il mio sostegno e la mia partecipazione alla conferenza internazionale sulla multidimensionalità della politica estera europea. La politica estera è il metro con cui valutare successi e insuccessi nel progresso di integrazione europea. Il futuro dell'Europa in quanto progetto di pace, di democrazia, di coesione dipende soprattutto dalla capacità con cui sosterremo i diritti umani e lo Stato di diritto ovunque nel mondo. Da questo punto di vista la situazione ucraina è strategica, è delicatissima, è molto complessa. L'Europa deve sostenere le forze democratiche dell'Ucraina, ma allo stesso tempo evitare il riprodursi di contrapposizioni geopolitiche con la Russia. Sempre l'Ucraina ci insegna che il Parlamento europeo può giocare un ruolo centrale nella determinazione della politica estera dell'Unione, attraverso il sostegno a missioni diplomatiche istituite ad hoc. Il Parlamento può far pesare tutto il suo prestigio nel costruire nuovi equilibri. Un altro elemento in cui il Parlamento può pesare in maniera decisiva riguarda la politica economica internazionale. Oggi la sfida principale per le istituzioni rappresentative riguarda la loro capacità di regolamentare il sistema finanziario internazionale, un sistema di interazioni che sfugge alle dinamiche classiche della sovranità nazionale. Con l'unione bancaria che abbiamo realizzato e stiamo realizzando, abbiamo visto quanto sia importante il coordinamento internazionale in materia di regolamentazione bancaria. E questo è un altro aspetto importante, centrale, che mostra come oggi la politica estera sia divenuta pienamente multidimensionale. Per questo la vostra iniziativa odierna è particolarmente importante ed io sono fermamente convinto che il Parlamento europeo saprà fare tesoro delle conclusioni a cui voi giungerete attraverso la vostra riflessione. Auguri e buon lavoro a tutti.
Thank you also to Mr. Pitella. And from Brussels we go back to Ljubljana, to our Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Minister Karel Rjavec unfortunately had to cancel his participation. Therefore, I would like to invite Mr. Bogdan Benko, the State Secretary, to give a short address. Mr. Benko, the floor is yours.
Well, good evening. High representatives, distinguished guests, excellencies, dear panelists, participants, ladies and gentlemen. First, I would like to extend the regrets and apologies of the Minister of Foreign Affairs, Mr. Karel Rjavec, who was supposed to be here with us today, but unfortunately, due to the unforeseen and urgent matters, he can't. Since I'm here, let me share a few thoughts on dimensions of the European foreign policy. I believe that the topic of this conference is well in place. European foreign policy and its multiple dimensions reflect global challenges we are facing today. The EU foreign policy also comprises diverse areas of activities, from the neighborhood policy, enlargement, strategic partnership, regional policies and development, to multilateral activities and the common security and defense policy. It's fair to say that with all these dimensions, the EU is striving to have a stronger role in the world. However, we must admit that Europe's greatest security challenges lies in our neighborhood. The common goal is very clear: stability, security, and prosperity in the south and in the east. But the question is, will the EU be able to step up as a regional security provider? Since the Lisbon Treaty, the EU foreign policy has been relatively successful. If I just name a few examples, the High Representative Lady Ashton is leading negotiations on Iran. She is facilitating Serbia-Kosovo dialogue, and the EU has enhanced its security role in Africa, just to mention Mali, Libya, Central African Republic, and so on. Despite that, more has to be done by using the full range of the EU's instruments and resources. At the end of the day, it's all about delivering and achieving concrete results. This is especially important in relation to the conflict prevention and crisis management. Sometimes it looks like the EU foreign policy lacks strategic planning. This might be the case in Ukraine and in Bosnia and Herzegovina. Our neighborhood is very important to us, also because of our economic and security interests. We need to prove our credibility and deliver what we promise. Lady Catherine Ashton once said, we should be judged by the effectiveness of what we can achieve in our own neighborhood. Ladies and gentlemen, please allow me to put these deliberations in a broader context. The economic and financial crisis and other global changes have created a new environment and require from all international players to be more flexible and to be more adapted to new realities. This is especially true for the European Union. If the EU wants to be ready for new challenges, it needs to adapt. For the reason, the discussion about the future of the EU has to be one of the key priorities. Our peoples in Europe, they should know, and they need know, that public money is put to good use. For this reason, we need to better communicate the EU foreign policy in all member states. Last year, Slovenia has launched a national debate about the future of the European Union with the title More Europe, More Slovenia. The outcomes of this project will be part of Slovenian position to be presented at the EU level. I am certain that this conference will also contribute to a very important discussion about the future of the EU. I wish you a fruitful debate in the coming 2 days and a pleasant stay in Ljubljana. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Mr. Benko. Last but not least, I would like to invite the host of the event, President of the Slovenian Pan-European Movement, which is one of the 28 members of the big family called Pan-European Union. Mr. Larius Geiser, the floor is yours.
Dear President of the Constitutional Courts, dear members of the Slovenian and the European Parliament, dear judges of the Constitutional Courts, Excellencies, Secretaries of States, and of course, dear Pan-European friends. First of all, let me thank once again the experts of the Constitutional Courts and the experts in the constitutional law that discuss it today and give us an incredible contribution on the vision that we have of the foreign policy in Europe. And I am absolutely sure that the contribution that they gave us will represent a fertile ground for tomorrow and Sunday discussion that we will have inside our conference. And of course, thank you very much all you for coming to this our second conference here in Ljubljana inside the project Europe for Citizens. And this is today a special moment because this conference is taking place under the high auspices of the Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Republic of Slovenia and the European Parliament. So far, thank you very much on behalf of the Pan-European movement to Mr. Martin Schulz, to Mr. Gianni Pittella, and of course Mr. Benko, thank you very much to the Minister of Foreign Affairs, and please report our gratitude to the Mr. Karel Rijavec, the Minister of Foreign Affairs. Well, looking to this room tonight, I have to say that I feel really very much proud. I have to say that we had to limit the application to the conference because of clear logistic constraints, but these pictures, the attendance, clearly show us that the pan-European idea still has the strength to get together different people and forcing them to discuss, to shake their beliefs, to think in order to find new solutions. The leading role of the Slovenian pan-European movement in this project is a sort of a return to the past. Slovenia, as the separate entity of that time Kingdom of Serbian, Slovenian, and Croatian, started its own international path right through the history of the pan-European movement. Slovenia, in the 1926, joined as a co-founder, the Congress of the pan-European movement in Vienna. 60 years later, almost, my predecessor, Dr. Francej Bučar, paved as first the way of the Slovenian independence and of the Slovenian democratizations through the window of the pan-European movement. Well, ladies and gentlemen, your presence here tonight is a sort of where you are paying homage to this history and to their job well done in the past. We convoke here you to continue this mission, to continue our mission. In the 90s, Europe passed from being a communitarian project to more unitarian one. It shows clearly that this project is useful, that this project is also attractive. But for some reason, this project is a sort of revision-needed project. Let me quote one of our past members of the pan-European movement, Winston Churchill. If you're going through the hell, keep going. Well, since our foundation, we went through the hell many times. We went through the hell in the 20s, we went through the hell in the 30s, we went through the hell during the Second World War, and we went through the hell also after the institutionalization of the European communities. Many times, we're suffering so-called development crisis. During our last conference held in Vienna in October, you can remember the one that were present, at the Diplomatic Academy of Vienna, opened by the Secretary General of the Organization for the Security and the Cooperation in Europe, Mr. Ambassador Lamberto Zanier. We were still discussing about the financial crisis. Well, as you have already seen with the first panel today, very likely tomorrow and Sunday, we will focus already on new challenges. Challenges concerning security, stability, and peace at our borders, inside different nations in our neighborhood. Geography and history influence the evolving vision of our own destiny. They influence also our choices and our national interest. The latest phase of the globalization, the ICT revolution, the incredible way of democratization of the politics, and the weakness of many representative democracies hijacked from the public opinion showed us the importance of the soft power. But the soft power without the power of the economics and also a part of a component of the hard power is nothing. Quoting from the book The Spore, there are moments when one hopes time is immutable, even when one knows that the slippage has begun. It is in such times that men commit atrocities, cruelties that are beyond the imagination. Well, we all pan-Europeans are committed strongly to avoid the foolishness of the mankind. And dear guests, speakers, moderators, we are used to attend tens of conferences, hundreds of conferences every year, round tables all around the world. Sometimes they leave just a feeble sign in our memory, maybe a feeble sign in history. But really, you are among the finest, the most brilliant mind in your field. And I appeal on you. Make this conference, please, make this conference something unique, something different. Don't give us ready-made solutions or discussions. Don't be politically correct. What we would like to see is a sort of a brainstorm where we can brainstorm together in order to find new solutions for the future, opening unpleasant questions. Be brilliant tomorrow and Sunday. Raise us up on the day-by-day politics and discussers. As another member of the Pan-European movement wrote once, Albert Einstein, the knowledge is more important than, the imagination is more important than knowledge. Please join us in these 2 days. Good luck, and thank you very much for coming. Thank you. Now, I'm known quite well as a rule breaker, so I will break a little bit the protocol. And given that among us there are a special guest, a great friend of Slovenia and a great friend of the Pan-European movement, and given that, of course, this person was also the Vice President of the European Commission, and the European Commission is our sponsor, together with the Parliament of Europe and the Foreign Minister of the Republic of Slovenia. I would like to ask Mr. Frattini to join us on the stage and to address for a brief regards and greet our audience. Thank you very much.
This is a very unexpected call, and thank you very much. Since I was not expected to speak this evening, I thank you very much, Mr. Geiser, for inviting me, all the Pan-European movements, friends, all of you, ladies and gentlemen, excellencies, ambassadors, members of parliament. Well, since you said some very tricky things, because you said we have to be, I would say, sometimes blunt in putting on the table real problem. I want to limit myself to very few remarks. Today I will moderate a very interesting panel with important members of European Parliament. It will be my pleasure to do. But I want to say, when we talk about European foreign policy, when you talk about European security policy, we should bear in mind that at the origin of all of this, it is a famous project, which is a political project put forward in 1950, from Mr. Schuman, in his manifesto letter where he addressed Mr. Adenauer and Mr. de Gasperi. And he first spoke about United States of Europe more than 60 years ago. It's not yesterday. Why that idea, why that project? Because the founding fathers of Europe understood at that moment, after the Second World War, it was necessary to bring peace, prosperity, and stability, but how? Dear friends, I start to be brutal. This is not an issue for technocrats. This is an issue for political leaders. Unless we have political leaders ready to take that responsibility before citizens, we will never succeed on having common European foreign policy nor common security European policy. I would prefer, rather than speaking at long, to have three examples. The first example, what the leaders did at the Maastricht time. They decided to have a common European currency, to have a single market and to have a single European, a common European bank. But this was an accomplished project. What is missing? Political governance. How is possible in nature to have a common currency, a common bank, and a single market without having a common political governance on economic side? So we have to finish the unfinished job from Maastricht more than 20 years ago. This is the first point. And when we talk about economic political governance, I would not only allude to the banking union, which is badly needed, urgently needed, but I would like to see a common economic strategy instead of looking at member states fighting each others in a moment of serious crisis for this or that member state of Europe. This is not only solidarity, this is a common political governance. When we look at European security policy, again, I would like to be very frank, as my name, Franco, well, I prefer to be very straight to the point. We have to acknowledge we have been in the last 3-4 decades after the fall of the Iron Curtain 20 and more years ago, we have been, as Europeans, only consumers of security at the expenses of our American friends. We have to be serious. We have to acknowledge the situation is no longer tenable when United States bear the burden about 64% of all the capabilities represented by NATO capabilities and assets provided by United States to guarantee our security. This has to be rebalanced. This is time for political decisions. It's simply not possible to continue to cut on defense, to continue to make horizontal cuts instead of making political choices. Be serious. We have to acknowledge where is possible to cut and where is necessary to invest more. How is possible to continue to cut on cyber defense? Cyber defense is the future of our society's protection. How is it possible not to say we have to do more, not less, on cybersecurity? On the contrary, we continue to keep, as in many member states, I would like to mention, including my country, huge number of unmovable ground troops that are completely useless because Italy is surrounded by friends. It's in the middle of Europe. We don't need thousands and thousands of unmovable troops. On the contrary, we need new technologies. We need cybersecurity. We need rapid deployable units. These are the decisions that are political in nature. When it comes to Mediterranean is the future. Some of you said very rightly, the southern dimension is the key dimension for the future of our security and our common foreign policy. But we have to acknowledge, again, we have been calling for Americans in the lead, always, everywhere. This is no longer possible. Division of labor is now indispensable because our American friends are asking their European parliaments to be in the lead, at least on Libya stabilization, on Northern Africa, in the Horn, in Mediterranean. How is it possible to think that America is always, everywhere, at every time in the lead? It's becoming untenable for the American budget and for the American political decision. Let's think America keeping under control the situation on the proliferation on Iran or the very fragile situation in the Gulf, where of course Europe has less leverage, and let's be us Europeans in the lead in Northern Africa and in Mediterranean. This is the other example. But on that, we need political decision. Is it not possible that Europe has not yet appointed a special envoy really empowered by European institutions on the Horn? The Horn of Africa, the Somalia situation is our future if I talk about security. Because if the penetration of terrorist cells from Yemen to the Horn continues like it is now, sooner or later they will be coming closer and closer to Europe as they are today. Third example, Ukraine. You very rightly mentioned UK and Ukraine, and Mr. Pittella did as well. I think in Ukraine we gave a very good example because 3 ministers of foreign affairs, Germany, France, and Poland, went together to Kiev on behalf of European Council of Foreign Ministers, and they succeeded in getting a deal with the president of Ukraine and the ceasefire and the political perspective to have early elections and to have, I would say, a new government of national unity. This is a good example. Why? Because we Europeans understood that we, I wouldn't mention only we, but first of all, we Europeans could play a bridging role in getting closer Ukrainian regime without breaking relations with the Russian Federation. We Europeans naturally have been in the lead and we succeeded. This is a success story. The last example I would like to make to say how important for strategic reasons, not for because I'm pro-European, I'm enthusiastic pro-European, because of our common interest is so important to have common foreign and security policy. Let's talk about the ongoing negotiations with the United States to have a transatlantic free trade agreement. Is that a purely economic agreement? Not at all. This is a highly political agreement because it is related to economics, to politics, to security, to prosperity, to all what is necessary and we used to call political strategic approach. This is why we need to negotiate with the United States and we need to have, as soon as possible, the agreement on free trade between the two shores of the ocean, because this is in our interest as well in the interest of our American friends. But all these are political, highly political issues. I conclude by saying to all those that are Eurosceptics, that will likely vote against Europe and the incoming European elections, please, we run the risk to take European integration for granted. Let's talk for once about the cost of not having European integration. Let's remember when the borders were closed, where there were customs control at the borders, where there was no single market, there were problems even to freely move from Paris and Rome. Let's talk about that. It's not 100 years ago, it's just few decades ago. Let's talk about the cost of not having European integration. If you think about that for once, you will realize that when you rightly say more Europe, more Slovenia, you are doing simply the interest of your country. Where I used to say more Europe means more Italy in Europe. I'm making the interest of my country. But if we combine the interests of Slovenia, Italy, France, Germany, the result is more Europe because Europe is in a common interest. This is why foreign policy and security policy are badly needed, not just because our founding fathers said so some decades ago, but because it's absolutely necessary today. Thank you very much.